Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bob. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip, hooray, hip hip, hooray, hip hip, hooray. This is your birthday song. It isn't very long. Hey!
93 today.
94.
94. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Coffee Club.
One for you and one for him. Thank you very much.
No, Bob, blow it out, mate.
There we go.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Lydia. You've got a pretty steady hand for
He
a
has,
94-year-old,
yeah.
Bob.
Amazing, Bob.
Now, Bob, after you've cut that cake, we want a speech from you.
Please.
This may be your final speech.
Thanks, Fred.
I said maybe.
You're doing well, then, Bob. Well done, man.
Yeah.
Never ever seen a cake
Better than
like
expected.
that. They normally go for
Yeah,
the
she's
cross.
putting all her balls on.
Are you going to serve and I'll hand them out?
Send them all around this one. Pass them to the left. Just stop an Alan.
They're not understanding. Got to keep passing
How
around.
come I stopped at you, Gordon? What about the
Keep
mate over
coming,
the road?
Gordon.
So, Bob, what was the most exciting day of your life? In 94 years, you must have had an exciting day.
They got married.
Oh, you're right, Doug.
Seriously?
As a Christian, I think I can say that the most exciting day was a night in Melbourne in 1949 when I read the Sermon on the Mount, and I couldn't sleep that night and gave a life to the Lord
On your own?
on my own in the bedroom in a guest house in Melbourne.
Wow.
I was working at the head office of the company down there for 6 months.
How old are you then, Bob?
Well, I was born in 27 and that was 1949. 22. 22.
Had you been to church or anything prior to that?
Prior to that,
Yeah, had anybody been witnessing to you?
no, I used to go to a Presbyterian church. I used to do yacht racing all day Sunday and then ride my bike to the Presbyterian church where my fellow workmate, we did clerical work in the office. Fellow workmate, he lived in Port Coupland and he used to go to that church. And I used to talk to him a lot, asked him questions. He said, you'll have to come to my church because you get all your answers there.
Yeah.
That's what he told me, words to that effect.
Yeah.
And I did. I'd yacht race all day Sunday and then on the bike and the evening service at the Presbyterian church. But of course, every sermon he preached, I reckon he didn't know what he was talking about. He had everything wrong.
Oh,
That's what I reckon.
yeah.
However, a very nice family, the pastor and his wife lived on the Man's, had a couple of daughters there and so on, but there's no interest there. But anyway, I kept going and used to go to the youth activities and all that sort of thing that they had. And then I was going to Melbourne, and so I spoke to the minister.
Try latte over here.
The birthday boy.
I'll hold it. Keep talking, Bob. Keep going.
Okay. Talked to the minister. And I said, I'm going to Melbourne for 6 months. Where can I find a Bible? Because there's no Bible in our home. And as far as I was concerned, the stories about Samson, Delilah, the flood and all that, they were Hans Andersen stories, I thought. I didn't even know they were in the Bible.
No.
Anyway, He then gave me a New Testament, and I took it to Melbourne with me when I was transferred to the head office down there. And they put me to accommodation at a very nice guest house.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, I opened it here, there and everywhere.
My trouser can't drink.
Couldn't get much sense out of anything at all. Anyway, I decided to start from the beginning in Matthew. And it wasn't the first night, I don't know what night it was, but I got to the Sermon on the Mount, and I got to the verse that says, "Broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be that go thereat. But narrow is the road that leads to life, and few there be that find it." That knocked me over. I couldn't sleep that night. I was just giving my life to the Lord all night.
Please take it. No, please take it. The Holy Spirit's amazing, isn't he?
That's,
Yeah, he works.
that's how I was converted through the Sermon on the Mount. And,
Great, Bob.
it
What
was-
year was that?
That was in 1949.
When did you get your call for missions?
Not long after, really, because I was brought up in a practical way. My father was a draftsman, and as a draftsman, he liked construction, and we lived on a double block of land on the North Shore Lake of Hawaii, waterfront block. We spent our kids mixing concrete. Dad had made a concrete mixer which you turned by hand. Turned the barrel by hand.
Yeah, yeah.
And we mixed concrete weekends. Our friends at school and the mates in the neighbourhood went and did other things a weekend, but myself and two brothers, we worked with my father in the backyard, making a boat harbour, which we eventually did, which turned out very good. And so it was that I felt that something practical was the future for me, and that's what led me to think about the mission field, the Lord's direction.
How did you become involved with Assemblies of God then from
Yeah, that's right.
Presbyterian?
Good point. Well, after my 6 months at Melbourne, I worked for the company for over 3 years, and it was time for long service leave really, but I was really resigning. I accompanied or actually took my mother to England to visit her relatives. And so I spent 6 months in England then, at the end of, that was in 1950 now. Took her to England, spent 6 months with the relatives over there, and came back to Australia, couldn't settle down in New South Wales, and I met somebody on board the ship coming home who lived in Brisbane, and so I moved to Brisbane. That didn't eventuate, but I lived in Brisbane and got a job. There was plenty of work then in 1950, 51. You could get jobs anywhere then. And so I lived in Brisbane, and lo and behold, I was living at New Farm, and a young fellow in the office where I was working there at the Valley, in a place there that manufactured chemist supplies. And he told me that he went to a Bible class. Boy, that appealed to me because I was trying to read the scriptures, but I couldn't make a lot of sense out of the scriptures really, you know, a bit hard for me. Anyway, he told me that there was a Bible college near where I lived, down at New Farm. So one evening I plucked up my courage, I went and knocked on the front door. And I reckon the little angel answered the door, Sister Armstrong.
Oh, yeah.
Old Sister Armstrong. She answered the door and she said, I knew it was a Bible college, it's called the Commonwealth Bible College. I didn't know it belonged to any denomination, I didn't belong to any denomination. To me, it was more like a international type of thing, you know. Anyway, she said, well, they're having a Bible study or prayer meeting, I think it was. If you like to wait for a while, they'll all be finished, nearly finished now. So I did wait, and lo and behold, Mrs. Wallace came up. She came up, Sister Armstrong got her, and sat me down. I think they gave me a cup of tea. Anyway, said, well, hang on a minute. James Wallace will be up soon, the principal, to talk to you. So I did wait for a while. Meantime, two fellas came up, Max Holland, Max Holland, a student, and a fella from New Zealand that was eventually went to be a pastor out at Toowoomba, a fellow by the name of Reed. Anyway, James Wallace came up, talked to me. I don't know what we talked about. I just said I wanted to study the Bible. This was all I said, because that's why I was there. I wanted to know what was in the Bible. I only had the New Testament. Anyway, eventually we talked about it. They told me what the college was all about. And it was time to go home. And Max Holland and the fellow Reed, I forget his Christian name, that fellow, walked me down to the tram stop and invited me to Glad Tidings Tabernacle that Sunday. So what happened was I was in the guest house just round the corner. So the Sunday morning I'm up to the Tabernacle, meet up with Max Holland out the front, takes me in, and lo and behold, for the first time in my life, I heard somebody speak in tongues. Clary Peters. Remember Clary Peters? No, you wouldn't know him. You remember Clary. Great booming voice. He sang in the choir. That sort of sounded good to me, I thought. I thought, this has got a...
Holy Spirit,
This sounds to me like something really good. And I had no idea about speaking in tongues then. Anyway, that's what happened. And they asked for anybody that wants to accept the Lord. Well, I was one of 4 people who went out the front.
Wow.
I really had given myself to the Lord already in Melbourne, more than 6 months prior to that. Anyway, I went through the process of an oral confession. And so then the name was put down eventually to be baptised. I was baptised in water at Glad Tidings Tabernacle
Right.
over the Christmas holidays.
Wonderful.
It was great. From then on, I went to the college. They accepted me. So I did my 3 years in college. After that, one of the gentlemen who was a preacher and also a lecturer at the college was down at Oakley in Melbourne. And I went down to Adelaide because I met my wife at the college. We were married in Adelaide and invited to be assistant pastor to Ralph Reed at Oakley Assembly in 1950.
Really?
55. Yeah.
Man.
And they sent us to Papua New Guinea as missionaries.
Incredible.
That was 55.
Yeah.
Can we have that again, Bob? Because Fred forgot to put the camera on.
Shut up, Les.
Tell me, Bob, how did you meet Aileen?
She was in the college. She was 1 year ahead of me. in
And
the
what
college
struck you about her?
As a student. Oh, she was single.
In other words, she was available.
Basically with this.
Beautiful Bob.
You know what happened there? That was the time of the Queen's visit. Remember the Queen's visit to Brisbane then? Anyway, all these students paid out whatever you had to pay to go and do a DC3 ride over Brisbane to look at all the lights. Look at most of the college students all paid their fare and went on a trip. And so organised that I sat next to Aileen.
Wow.
And that was the start.
Yep.
And from then on,
Was that the moment that convinced you?
yes.
It was. That convinced you should marry Aileen.
all the starter romance anyway.
Okay.
Good story.
Great, Bob.
Yeah.
Unless we ask you these pertinent questions, Bob, we never get to know your story.
That's the most I've heard you speak. All put together since I
Yeah, I don't have the voice for it these days.
We have a good journalist in
Take a sip of your chai latte.
Any other questions to the Venerable Missionary?
No, we'll let him.